It's John English here with Dr. Shawn McCarthy, and I'm with Dr. McCarthy, and he's the PhD in history, and I'm the senior historical correspondent because that's what I wanted to call myself. That's the bottom line. I had to call myself something.
Exactly, of course. Titles are important.
Might as well be senior. There's no one else doing it. So it's very easy. It's very easy to be senior.
Top in your field.
Oh yeah, top of your class by a good 3 inches. Jethro used to say. Beverly Hills Brothers. What was that show called?
The Beverly Hillbillies.
Yes.
Yeah.
Top of my class. Good 3 inches. Anyway. So I've been conducting some interviews and the people that I'd like to know more about, and I knew Shawn when I was on the board of directors for Beaubears Island, and he was there as executive director, I believe.
I was.
Right.
Yep.
And you were there for probably 10 years. Is that right?
I was the executive director for I think 7 seasons, but I've been there for 14 more before. Before that, I think. Yeah.
You and William Davidson go back a ways. So we're gonna find out what kind of background Shawn has and how he came to be a PhD. Not many of those in Miramichi. So let's find out what drove him to do that and what path he took, and we'll go from there. So I like to do it in a chronological because it kind of gives us some kind of sequence in your mind, eh? Sure. And as stories come up, you can relate those. Anything that would be embarrassing to somebody, I don't want to use a name per se, but you could say, well, Jack stuck his tongue on a frozen pole in the schoolyard and he had to get that taken off by a torch, which it was done. We were that dumb. I was. So anything embarrassing, we just won't use names, but anything that's, human nature is very good for people that are at home. We're all the same, basically. People think we're all special, but in some ways we're the same. We get up, we're born, go to school, get a job, make money, lose money, get love, lose love. You know how that goes, hey, Shawn?
I do.
So
that one specifically, but the loss more so than the gaining. But hey, whatever. That's it.
Well, love it usually is more of a loss than a gain in my experience.
Well, there you
My
go.
experience.
That's it.
Okay,
I didn't realize what the river was going to remember when the river remembered today, but here we are.
And that's exactly what most people would go through as well.
Yes, sure.
What the heck? So we'll go in a sequence chronologically, I think. And so I don't really want to know the date you're born exactly. So you could give us roughly 70s, 80s, 90s, the 30s, if that's what we have to say. Well,
No, 1985.
Okay.
Yep.
And your parents?
So Timothy and Michaeline.
Mm-hmm.
So Dad's from Nelson, and Mom was from Exmoor, up in the northwest.
Reggie?
Yep.
That's why she's so nice.
There you go.
Yeah, good.
Yep.
And your dad was a millwright up at Acadia.
He was.
When Acadia actually existed.
Mm-hmm.
And what did your mom do?
Mom was over on the other side of the river. She was at accounts payable at the mill in Newcastle, at Repap in Newcastle. I guess when the mayor's assistant is out, she replaces her at City Hall. So
Well, there you go.
Yeah, that's it.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, so
And I see your dad still, up to a couple of years ago, he had 8 or so cord of wood in the yard. Is he still burning wood?
he is. Yep. Although now this year they got a heat pump put in, so it'll probably be a smaller amount of wood from here on out. But
Yeah.
but yeah, like I say, Dad still buys it in 8-foot lengths, cuts it, splits it, and sells it.
My dad would buy 8 cord and we had to cut it and split it and burn it in the darn house.
Yep.
And I saw you once a couple of times outside doing something with wood, piling or splitting. I'm not sure what it was.
Yeah.
It's a hard job though.
It is. It is. Well, oh, for sure.
But it gives him exercise, eh?
Yeah, well, that's it. And I mean, he's got the hydraulic splitter now, which means he doesn't have to.
God.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. No more axe. We're splitting them all, I guess. But yeah, like I say, and I mean, one time, that's probably 10 years ago now, or maybe better. Dad piles wood really well. His father taught him how to pile wood.
Professional wood piler.
He is very good. I remember one day the priest from St. Patrick's, Father McQuaid, he came down and he took pictures of it because he was so impressed that he said it was like artwork. Because they're all level and they all, like I said, that's it. Unfortunately, I was not a good student in that respect.
No.
All my piles were all kind of mine were more impressionistic.
Yes, I see. Yeah.
More like Picasso. They were,
You did some crazy stuff.
That's it. Cubist art piling or wood piling, I guess.
Interpretation
I don't know.
art.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Yeah.
Oh my God, I hate firewood now.
Yeah.
I just did it too much when I was young. I just can't do it. Anyway, so you're born then.
Yep.
You were only a child, or you had brothers and sisters?
I have a younger brother, my brother Thomas, born in '87, 2 years and 1 day after myself.
Well, I would have thought after your parents got perfection when you were born, they would have stopped. But I guess not. Eh?
Well, I don't know about that.
Huh?
You know what I mean? That's it. Tom's a pretty great guy. I'd say that even if he wasn't my brother.
I don't think I ever met him.
Oh, he's about as tall as I am, but he's got a big red beard, and he works for the forestry in Doketown.
Where, did he go to? Well, now it's not called Forest Ranger School. It's called Maritime Technology Forestry or something.
Yeah, the Maritime College of Forest Technology.
Yeah,
that's where he went.
Jeez, I was there. I went there in 85, something.
Yeah.
Got a scaler's license halfway through it, and said, I ain't going back to that. It's just too hard.
No, that's it.
So he's a brainiac. He's kind of smart. Like
Oh,
you.
absolutely, yeah. I mean, he's and like I said, he really enjoys the work that he does. He was in Mushabukto for a while, and
So is he with
now he's in
DNR?
Doketown. Yep.
Okay. Oh wow. Good for him. Okay. So, well, I don't want to get into the therapy stuff. Like, what is your earliest memory when you were young? I don't want to get into that
Okay.
stuff.
That's a pretty good story, though.
Okay, let's ask that question.
So when I was 2, for my first memory, I lost one of my front teeth. I didn't have too many teeth at the time, but I was at my Aunt Kathy's, my mom's sister. And they had a sunken living room. And
Right, yeah.
of course, like I said, I was trotting around and whatever. They said, don't, yeah, that's it. Like, don't go near the steps. And of course,
So you did.
immediately. And I don't remember anything after falling flat on my face. But yeah, apparently that's it. I knocked it out of my head, and they thought that it might never come in because it was, but anyway, but it did. But that's the first thing I can remember was losing one of my front teeth.
Rather painful.
Yeah.
Do you have any happy memories when you were a child?
I remember also, probably from around that time, maybe a little bit later, my grandfather, who lived next door. My grandfather died in '88, so I wasn't very old. My mom's dad. And I remember he used to have a big front end loader. And I remember
So
him
where was that house?
So as you're driving through Exmoor, there's a big house. If you're heading towards Savogel, there's a big
Yep.
white house up on the hill.
Yeah.
That was my grandparents' house. It was my grandmother's house. It was in her family, and yeah, my grandparents lived there. And right next door was my uncle's house.
So was he a farmer, fisherman, lumberman?
He was a lumberman, yeah.
Yeah.
And he was a farmer too, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a side garden. Right?
That's it.
Potatoes, the turnips.
no, and he raised livestock as well. Yeah.
Okay.
But he used to, he was, and he had horses and so on and so forth. At one time, he was known, I guess, well, his brother told me years later, he was known as a really great teamster. He would always bring the biggest load out of the woods. And one day, his brother, because they worked for their father, Albert, my great grandfather,
Right.
and they were Easties, I should say that.
A lot of Easties up that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, there were 13 of them in the family. So a lot of those Easties were, I guess, maybe our Easties, but
You might have started playing cards after about the sixth one. Hey, let's play cards.
there you go. But anyway, so
Okay.
one day, like I say, his brother was bound and determined to beat him. So he loaded up the biggest load that he could get, and bigger than my grandfather's load, and he got this other guy to bring it out, and so it would be his team that brought out the biggest load that year. But apparently the guy was too busy turning around and looking back, you know what I mean, and kind of waving to him, and, we're doing it. He wasn't paying attention to where he was going. He drove the horses right off the road into the snow. So my great-grandfather sent my grandfather to fix it, to get that load out of the ditch and, up. So he unhooked his brother's team, hooked his own team, and brought the biggest load out of the woods once again. So
It's a real skill to work with horses.
sure.
From what I read, you have to guide them, but not be cruel with them.
I suppose,
The horses have to be. They have to want to do what you want them to do. Kind of like same as a dog, really. Yeah, that's a real skill. Well, that's a lovely area up there.
It is.
It would, so there was a farm up there, and somewhere up there, I interviewed a girl in way after that, 2017, she was a Harris, I think was her maiden name. I think she was from up that area. Nice people, down to earth, and they had to work hard for everything they had, everything. And they were used to, live in what we would call in the boonies. You had to live independently, and you couldn't, just run to the doctor when any time you had some kind of illness. You had rubbing alcohol and some kind of balm, and bandages made from bed sheets, and that was almost it. Tough people. Yeah. So okay, yeah, that's a nice story.
Yeah.
You got any more stories?
Oh, I'm sure I could probably think of some more, but
Well, chronologically, then you started, I suppose, at grade 5, and was it Little White School, or by then was it down in the Nelson Elementary?
yeah. So I started. Yeah, I started right there at the brick schoolhouse when I was in grade 1. And there wasn't I went to Diane Fitzpatrick's private kindergarten because there was no public kindergarten at the time.
Aren't you special?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So she had a kindergarten in her house, so we used to go there.
Was that in Nelson or up there?
No, just in Nelson there.
Okay.
Right next to where the credit union used to be.
Yes.
Yeah, so there's a big house right there, and she had a daycare upstairs, and she had a kindergarten
Oh, okay.
downstairs.
Okay.
I think there's an apartment there now, but yeah. Anyway, so that's where we went, and then we started school in grade 1 in Nelson, and we were there until grade 3, and then grade 3 they tore the old Nelson schoolhouse or school down, and they built the one that's there now. I remember that year specifically because we got off early and we came back late, so we had an extra long summer break. Yeah,
Good like that.
absolutely.
Did you like school?
I liked it. Yeah, I think probably in general. Some parts of it I liked better than others, but
Right.
in general, I didn't mind it too much.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll go a little further now, and I guess, was there any point in your early childhood that you could identify to say, this is where my interest in history started? Was there a lot of history around you, or did you see a lot of history, or was there any of that going on?
Well, I guess I'll answer that question in 2 ways. I mean, yeah, I think there was a lot of history that was going on around me, but maybe I wasn't always paying attention to it. I think as so many of us do, you hear all these stories and whatever, and you're young, and you don't,
Yeah.
especially when you're really young, like a lot of that stuff goes over your head, and the significance of it absolutely does. And then as you get older, you hear it, but you don't particularly care. and so it's only later. But I guess I always really liked stories, and I was always I like to hear stories, I like to tell stories. So that I think maybe was where I kind of got started. So I would hear a story that was good, and and it might be historical, it might be about something that happened years before, it might be a story about my grandmother, my mom's mom, would tell us about when her ancestor, we'll say, I can't remember how many greats grandfather, come over from Ireland, and he paid $1 for a rat's thigh on the boat over because he was so hungry. Yeah. So, but
Well,
again, like the,
Not a whole lot of eating on a rat's thigh.
nope.
But it's better than chewing on wood, I guess.
I guess so. But
Holy crap.
so things like that, like I say, would kind of grab my attention. And in grade 4, we had to do speeches for the first time. In English class, we had to do
in front of class.
Yeah, exactly. And we had to come up with a topic and whatever. And I did mine in the history of Nelson. And I think my parents probably had a hand in
Guiding you.
That's it.
Providing information.
Yeah, and a lot of my information was probably lifted directly from your father's book, Nelson and Its Neighbors. So I remember reading that was the 1987 small print edition.
Yeah,
I remember going
absolutely.
through that and choosing little pieces out of it to talk about how Nelson came to be what it was.
But a lot of his information, of course, probably all of it. I mean, history is one thing that kind of gets passed from person to person, and he knew enough to interview people because he didn't know enough about, say, the credit union or the softball association or the church or the school board or whatever. And that was why the book was good, is because he got sources from so many different experts in the field.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So
Okay.
that was probably, and then after that, I was chosen to be a part of a small group of students that went to Moncton for the Heritage Fair, and we did a little project on the history of Barnaby River.
Oh, I'd like to know that too.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was,
What were
I
you-
was probably the youngest one there, so I didn't really kind of get into a lot of it because a lot of it was because there were kind of junior high school kids that were in the group with me, and they kind of did most of the heavy lifting. But it was interesting to take part in it, and then to go to Moncton to kind of see other heritage presentations that were going on at the time.
from other schools?
Yeah,
That's a good idea.
yeah.
So you got the history virus at a relatively early age, maybe
Yeah.
10 or 12 or
Yeah.
something around there.
Probably so. And then in grade 5, we did a lot of, we had John Bosma was our teacher, and I remember that was really the first year that we really got a lot of history in the course of that year, because of course he was a junior high school teacher who was now teaching elementary, so he brought a lot of his knowledge from junior high into the class.
So in a way, your knowledge that was that was exposed was maybe a little bit higher in knowledge, really.
And he brought his dad in to talk to us about the Second World War, because of course he had lived in occupied Holland during the war, and I mean that was really the first. I mean, I knew that there had been a conflict called the Second World War, but it was probably that year where I really started to get into the understanding of this is something that happened and the details of it, and and what people went through, again, just as kind of a stepping off point. So there was a lot of it was definitely a
So-
revelatory experience.
As the years went along and you got more experience to history, could you feel the grip getting a little tighter on you, or your interest getting a little more intense? In high school, what level of interest did you have in history?
I think I enjoyed it. High school was a little bit different because I don't think the curriculums all kind of lined up, because the last things that we were doing in middle school, as I recall, in Nelson, were a little bit more local. I remember sitting down with my grandparents, my dad's parents, and we had to write an essay.
Yeah.
I remember that was probably in grade 7 or maybe grade 8 about something from our own family history. And so I remember sitting down with my grandparents and my uncle and kind of getting all these different stories. And that's when I found I heard the story of my my father's mother's father, my great-grandfather, Martin English, who was killed in a train accident in 1933, in January of 1933. And it was interesting going back and looking at the newspapers.
Was that just south of Rogersville?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's really fortunate to have people that are old enough to actually come almost from a different dimension with history that they know and was passed down to them. And that's where you really get, I guess, as a young person, maybe 12 or 14, whatever, to get it firsthand from a relative that you know and trust, and it's relevant to your family or your community. That's when it really takes a bite with you, you know.
It does, absolutely.
And that's incredible. Great experiences.
Yeah, but then when we moved over to high school, you know, the social studies program really was more, again, it kind of was world events and that sort of thing, and kind of cultures and that, which is great. But it, you know, you definitely feel that kind of jump from like, okay, now we were talking about my family or you know, kind of local things that were going on, and now we're
real abstract.
You know,
the jump is so far; it's almost it is abstract.
And then by grade 10, you're into ancient history. So now we're not even talking about, you know, we're not even talking about like modern day.
We learn
you know,
these damn friggin' pyramids.
I mean, it's interesting. It was interesting for sure. And then we moved into modern history in grade 11, and that was a little. I enjoyed that. We had some. We were kind of told, you know, kind of going into that, it was a lot of papers. You know, a lot of you got to write a 10-page paper on this, a 10-page paper on that.
11.2 or 11.1?
11. There wasn't an 11.1 at the time. It was just 11.2.
Oh, okay.
Modern history.
Who was the teacher? Do you recall?
Heidi Whipple was the teacher.
Okay.
She's Heidi Ryder now. She's the principal at James M. Hill. But she was great, and she kind of gave us a lot of. I think we wrote maybe one or two like long form papers, but everything else was projects and presentations and going out and kind of interviewing people, you know, or kind of, you know, we had to do our own kind of life of the French Revolution. So, you know, for me, if somebody really liked creative writing and that sort of stuff, I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
And then when we got to do the Cold War, and they said, well, can you, you know, for extra points, if you can find somebody to talk about what the Cold War was like here. So I went and I ended up talking to Baz McGeehan, who's married to my dad's cousin Maureen, who served, you know, in the military during the Cold War, and he told me all kinds of stories about his brothers who had served in Korea and the time, you know, in his time in the Canadian forces, you know, doing peacekeeping and other things at the time of the Cold War. I remember him telling me about I forget now where they were, but being like surveilled by Soviet aircraft, kind of fly over them and kind of note their position, and you know,
It was crazy times.
yeah,
Really, like, and almost, you know, one madman away from nuclear annihilation.
there you go.
Because you know, the USSR had nukes, and the US had a lot of nukes, and Canada had nukes, and probably Japan, and you know, Germany, and just too many people with too many nukes, you know, kind of dangerous.
Sure, absolutely.
And yeah, the different point of view from the countries that were in that game, the USSR and the US especially. You know, my system is better than your system. And then I remember along came the Canada Summit in '72, and it came down to a real knuckle basher, just terrific game at the end of it there. And you know, the ideology was kind of an expression of what happened in sport. And there was a real competition between those two countries and Canada, and fortunately we won that conference because we're the greatest players in the world. But Treček was a great goalie. Oh, geez, he was unbelievable. But at the time, I don't think anybody, except maybe the Russians, figured out that they were really, really good hockey players.
Right.
And they were good hockey players because they were trained in skills, not just being knuckle draggers, but in real good skills like skating, passing. Anyway, the point is that country wanted to express their power, so to speak, on the world stage with athleticism. And that's why they threw so much money in these these kids were probably trained for 10, 15 years before they became, elite hockey players, and that country did it for just to flex their muscles, and that it was amazing competition between those two countries, and finally Russia basically went broke, and they said, okay, no more wall, we're not going to do that no more, and it was amazing times, really. So you're now into, say, grade 10, 11, and 12.
Yeah.
Excuse me, I'm going to give you a little more
Okay.
drop of rum there.
Thank you very much.
This is history, so we'll go back 50 years. That's exactly what I would have poured 50 years ago.
Well, there you go.
So yeah, now you're grade 11 or 12.
Mm-hmm.
And did you know at the time that you're going to go to university to do history, or how did that happen?
So, no. I knew I was going to go to university. I suppose it's, to a certain extent, it was kind of just expected that that's what we were all going to do once we graduated, is, you just keep on going. But,
Yeah.
but at the time, I didn't think history was what I was going to end up doing.
Major?
No, I didn't think so.
Yeah, okay.
I wanted to go into, I went to St. Mary's in Halifax. And I was going to go there because there was a police science program, and that's what I wanted to get into. I wanted to, I was really interested in, that sort of thing. So I thought that's what I would do. And I did take a Canadian history course while I was there, because you had to, there were certain courses that you had to kind of take in your first year, and you have to take so many courses from the humanities, and history was in there. So I said, well, I'll take a Canadian history course. And yeah, so it was interesting. I should also note at this time, another really important influence enters the picture. Because at the end of grade 10, it was my first summer at Beaubears, so that was the first. So by this point, I'm also there
As a summer student?
As a summer student, yeah.
Did you play a character there that year?
No, the first year I was there in 2001, they were looking for somebody that was kind of younger, and so that they would have somebody that would kind of be there for a couple of years. So I took that and went, I took it to the nth degree and ended up being there for 21 years.
Did you get a pension out of it? Jesus, they gave you a gold watch. Anyway.
But yeah, so that year, like I say, we were in the cafeteria at the school in Nelson,
Yeah.
and so I was kind of the guy that was, for lack of a better word, kind of the tour guide inside of the interpretive center. The other people would go out and would go to the island and would do like the tours over, but I was the guy that would give you the
So
tour
what year
inside
would
the
that
building.
be now?
2001.
We had a ferry going at that time?
You had a ferry going 3 times a week.
Oh, okay.
So every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday, there was a ferry over to the island.
Okay. So did you feel, I don't know, any inclination within yourself to say this history stuff and this is something I want to go through with, or did that come later in university?
It came later in university. I mean, it's as strange as it is to believe. After my first year at Beaubears, I enjoyed it well enough, but it wasn't anything that I figured, well, I'll go back next year, and I'll go back, while I'm in high school, because the summer job is a good thing. It
As long
gives
as
you
they
a little
keep
extra
paying,
money.
yeah, I'll go back.
That's
Yeah,
it. But I figured once I was done, after my first year of university, I would take a job somewhere else. I'd be off for longer, so I, didn't do it that way. So I think it was time to declare a major, maybe the first half of my second year in university. So you had, it's kind of a, get off the pot kind of time. You've messed around for
a decision.
exactly. And just, it seemed like I really wasn't interested, in kind of going on with the science thing. I was enjoying my time in the sciences to a certain extent, but some of the courses were good and some of them, were not. And I was, I had a really good experience in the Canadian history course, and I was in the middle of an American history course that really seemed to interest me. So I decided, well, that's what I'll do. I'll move into history. Now, of course, at this time, I only had 2 history credits. I forget how many I needed but anyway, to graduate with a history degree and to get my honors. So I also needed 2 credits in a language. So my 3rd and my 4th year were all history courses.
That's a lot of reading.
It was a lot of reading and a fair bit of writing. I had, I remember I had like 3 or 4 essays due like in consecutive weeks. But it went, and I really enjoyed it. I had some really great teachers while I was there. I'll never forget Dr. Young. When I was in my 3rd year and I had to make it in my 4th year, he was a teacher, very much a professor of the old school. He had gotten his doctorate in Chicago in like the 60s. So maybe the early 70s. But anyway, this was now, he'd been teaching for 30 some years. And so he said, when we write papers for him, he said, don't give me an argument. Just tell me what happened. Just, give me the sequence of events as it occurred. I don't want to know. So that made the papers really easy because I didn't need to construct
State the facts.
That's it. Exactly.
No more than the facts.
That's it. Just the facts. Yeah, like Joe Friday. That's all that he wanted. He said to me once, because we had, by the time I was in my 4th year, we'd have master's students and undergraduate students in the same class. And I remember him saying, in my day, he said, a master's degree was just a gentleman's degree. You just paid so much money and you got your master's. It was just to prove that you could.
Like a kind of a British tradition,
Maybe.
where they had money over in London. You could buy your way through anything. You could go through the Navy. You could get a commandeership, whatever you wanted. Lordship, we'll pay for it.
That's
no
it.
problem.
Yep.
Okay. Well, how did you find Halifax?
I really